Well, we're back after the break, and we're ready to go into our final section, but we found Jonathan Denwood from WP Tonic, and he's on that new show, which is meetthepeoplespress.com, which is on 9:30 Pacific Sundays, and it's recorded too. It's our latest podcast, all about, of course, it's all about Meet the Press, and we talk about the issues. And he comes from Jonathan is a SaaS programmer here in Reno, but he's from England, and he's a developer. He's got a question for Tom. Tom, go ahead, Jonathan. Shout out that question.
Yeah, sure. Tom, I was just wondering, we've got any tips or advice about how I could get on other podcasts, that might help me with promoting my SaaS product?
Yeah, Jonathan.
Real fast, his SaaS product is not only about technology and stuff, and he has some support on development teams, but his SaaS product is targeted at the real estate industry.
Awesome. So with that, you've got a couple things going for you right now, is that you've already been on another podcast, and often that's the biggest hurdle that people have. So if you can point to one podcast that you've already been on as a guest or as a host, you can reach out to other podcasts and say, hey, I've got this area of expertise to talk to your customers about. Not that I'm selling my product, but I can help them with this area. And you can always point back to other shows that you've done. Because when a podcast host invites you to be on, his worst fear is that, oh my gosh, Tom's going to come on here and embarrass me. He's going to say something in front of my audience that I'm going to have to edit out. So if you can point to something that you've already done, it should make it much easier for the host to say yes. The other thing to think about is that podcast hosts are busy. Most of them aren't doing it as a full-time job. As you know, they've got a lot of things going on. So just send them a short email explaining what you want to do. It doesn't have to be 2,000 words. And what a lot of people will do is just come up with a one sheet. And it's like a one-page PDF that says, this is Jonathan's beautiful picture. Here's his company. Here's a bio. Here's 5 things that he could talk about. Here's all of his contact information, your Skype ID, your social media, and then get a testimonial down there. And if you can find a testimonial from somebody that the host already knows, boy, you're golden then. They're going to look at the email real quick, then look at the sheet and going, oh yeah, I need a guest. Jonathan's the guy. So that's just a great strategy that we've used, and that's had the best success for us and our clients.
Oh, thanks, Tom. That was great.
Well, Jonathan, thank you for popping on with that question, and I'll see you on Sunday for Meet the People's Press. Well, there we go. I'm doing my first digital product. I've been podcasting. I do streaming too. I have a small streaming company where we go out and use streaming, and we stream a lot of folks around Reno because there's a demand for that. But it's a very labor-intensive business. It's definitely not digital. So we're creating a couple of digital products, but our first major digital product is just simply taking this platform, which is Blab, and showing people how easy Blab is to transition into a podcast. It is so easy. I don't have to have call recorder, Skype. I don't have to have a levelator, because they do a great job with the wave. So what a tool we have here. So that's like a commercial for me.
And digital products are great too, because you can get them so quickly. People may not be able to get your time to learn something, but they can time shift. They can get that course when they need it. And from your standpoint, you just have to come out with version 1.0 of it. Mm-hmm. And then ask everybody, what questions do you still have? What more resources do you need? And taking that feedback from the customer, the experts, and you can just, get version 2.0 next week and version 3.0 the following week. And all of a sudden that course gets better and better. And it's based on everything the real customers have asked for.
And I'll tell you, even though I use a couple tools quite a bit, I use ScreenFlow, things of that nature. It's still at that first one, it's still tough to get out, just like your first podcast. One of the things I teach is go get a $5 lip-sync account. First of all, I was developing something looking at YouTube where you just go up on YouTube initially, look at your product, and then transition to a podcast. But just start with Blab, transition to a podcast on a $5. Just see how it sounds. Just play with it. See how easy it really is. It's not as hard as people think. There's quite a few steps, but it's not difficult. It's that system you're talking about.
Exactly.
Very good. So, Tom, we had a little bit of commercial interruption. I guess you'd call that in the middle of our conversation here, but let's get back to you. Now, you gave me 3 books. Do you want me to read those?
Could you please?
Thou Shalt Prosper, Essentialism, and Automatic Customer.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about those before we go into your success principles?
Yeah, when you asked me what books, this year I've got a goal of reading 52 books. I'm a avid reader and I love it. But those are books, Thou Shalt Prosper is one that I read every year. And Rabbi Daniel Lapin wrote it. And it's really an interesting way to look at money and business. He takes it from an Old Testament biblical view of business, and it's really a great way to look at it. And I think especially coming out of the military, sometimes there was times where we looked at it as that, nonprofits were better or big business was bad. And I think this puts a light that really any entrepreneur or self-employed business person can hold their head up high and say, yes, I'm doing my God-given calling. I'm serving people. So that's a great book that I love. Essentialism by Greg McCowan. I've read that about 3 times now. Once with my wife, once with a mastermind group, and once with people at church. And that one was so important because there are so many things as talented people that we can do. You come out of the military, there's a million things you can do, but you can't do all of them. And you need to really figure out what is essential for you. And it could be to get you to your goals. It could be to express who you are. And that's even with your life too. I mean, there's that 80-20 rule. 80% of the stuff gives you, or 20% of the stuff gives you 80% of the return. So why are you wasting time on that other? And so that book, Essentialism, is just a great one to figure out what's important in your life. And the final one that I talked about on this one, Bill, was Automatic Customer
by John
Warlow. Warlow.
Okay.
John has written 2 books. The first one was called Built to Sell, and that is a great book too.
Right.
But Automatic Customer will explain what you see on the internet right now, how Amazon can never turn a profit but keep growing. Why these software as a service companies are popping up and being so successful. It's the whole idea of you don't want another customer. You don't want to just chase a transaction. What you want is a relationship with a customer for life, right? If you look at Starbucks model, why would anybody go to all of that effort that they do with the leather couches and the fireplaces to sell a $5 cup of coffee, right? McDonald's sells it for $3 next door.
$1. Why don't
you just do the same? But the average lifetime value of a Starbucks customer is like $35,000.
Wow.
So it's that automatic customer. They don't want to sell you a $5 cup of coffee. They want you being a customer for years and years. And that book by John Warlow, The Automatic Customer, is a great way to look at not only it's too easy to just make a transaction, but that book really talks about how can you make a lifetime customer.
Very good. Now, for the listener out there, for every one person producing podcasts, there's hundreds of people consuming podcasts. And if you want to make a little bit of money, the first way to monetize is through affiliates. And that's what I've done since day one. Just affiliates on the side, playing around with all my websites. I actually make a little bit of money too. We have 3 elements. I actually create websites for locals and podcasters and get people up, but they're just fast, good, solid websites with the rules. So people have a good time with their website, keep their domain, things of that nature. But one of the first things I always show them is not put the affiliates up, because people will, friends, family, anyone will hit those links and it'll go to Amazon in this case, and you can buy the books. Boom. It doesn't cost you anything more. It gives a few cents actually in this case to your friends. But it's a great place to start, and sort of people get addicted and they build from there. So that's one of the starting places. That's why sometimes we ask for books. I'm going to start doing that more often in this show. It's evolved at 132 shows. So going on, this is my favorite part. We're going to talk about your success principles. Now, on your success principles, I'm going to read those off and I'm going to change one of them. And then we're going to go back and talk about them, Tom.
Okay.
So I'm going to read these. And the first one is start with strategy, not tactics. 2 is cross-pollinate, bear fruit. 3 is blame the system. That's what I love that one. Blame the system, not the people. 4, I might change this one. I got to look at it. I'm just going to say amaze others. 5, I'm going to say there's nothing new under the sun. 6 is choose who you work with. 7 is customers are the only experts. And 8 is test and improve. So we'll start with number 1, start with a strategy and tactic.
And this is something that only the military people seem to understand. Especially digitally and online now, people are just amazed with the tools. It's like, oh, I've got to buy this new program. I've got to get this new app. And if I only did this plugin on my WordPress site, then everything would be great. And that's like starting out with, well, if I only had this weapon, or if I only had this weapon system, if I only had this, then everything would be okay. When you have no idea what you're trying to do, or, is the enemy on land or sea or air? You don't know, you don't care, but I need the shiny new object or the shiny new weapon because that's what I need. And from the digital aspect, people are out there trying to sell it. They're trying to sell the shiny new objects, and people always chase those. Whereas if you know what your strategy is, if you know what you're trying to do, then you can look and say, does this support my strategy? Yes or no? And then you can decide whether or not you need it.
Okay. What's my strategy?
What's your strategy?
It's a tough one.
Building a relationship with, I would say, military officers, maybe especially academy grads.
For this show, yes.
I mean, and helping them, building your thought leadership, and then trying to find questions that they have and pain points so that you can address them and they can give you certificates of appreciation.
What we are doing is we are trying to interview at least 4 academy grads a month, 2 to 4, and we do 3 interviews a day. I scoot 3 interviews a week, so it's kind of neat. We could drop that down to 2, and I have other shows too. We do about 4 major podcasts. This is my biggest time consumer, and it gets pretty good following. My top one is WP Tonic, a tech show. But I was going to say early on, I started coming out is the concept of doing on-demand news every day in a community. Could that be set up? And we also have a real estate company. I decided not to re-engage the construction design build company. So my strategy, of course, you have to monetize, you have to make money, but it's evolved too. I mean, it's definitely moving to a different area. It's moving more to digital. And what happened is I've been doing this podcast for about 30, 40 shows. And I had a local developer, Jonathan, came to me with other developers and said, can you help me put together a podcast? So it sort of opened up my eyes to a lot of different people. I go to WordCamps now. I've learned a tremendous amount about coding and systems and processes within WordPress. And I've met the top WordPress people in the country, and we've had them on the show, and I go to WordCamps. So what is my strategy? You have to make money. And it's still evolving, though. My strategy is to go into digital products, do those well, and eventually, inch by inch, is to get that studio concept up in every little town where you're doing the news on demand.
Awesome.
But it's not ready for that. We're not quite ready for that. It's coming.
But with that strategy, it becomes very clear what tactics you want to use. Yeah. I always point back when my youngest was in junior high. She came to me and she said, "Dad, you need to be on Instagram with all your clients." And I said, "Well, why do I need to be on Instagram?" She said, "Well, because everybody is on there." And I said, "Well, who's everybody?" And she said, "Me and my friends." Well, there was a big thing about Instagram right then, but I looked at it and her friends are not my customers. They're not my target customer. So why would I waste my time there? Instagram might be the new and shiny object, but if your customers aren't there, you don't have any business being there. And knowing your strategy will help you say yes or no to those various tactics.
I've been on LinkedIn for a long time. It was the only platform I could be in the military for a while, and when what I did, my clearances. And I also am on Facebook. So my clients are on Facebook, but even more so, I think, are on LinkedIn now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, LinkedIn is a great platform, especially for B2B. And I think the average income of a LinkedIn person is over $100,000. So, it's definitely not telling about, what you had for lunch, but if you want to connect with like-minded people, it's a great spot.
Very good, Tom. So cross-pollinate and bear fruit.
Yes. I think that this example comes from growing up in the suburbs of Chicago. My dad went and he put every kind of fruit tree you could imagine in this small lot. And, there was a pear tree, an apple tree, a plum tree, a cherry tree. And after a couple of years, he never got any fruit out of it. And he was complaining to the neighbor one time, who was an old farmer. And he's like, well, of course not. There's no other trees like that around here. They've got to cross-pollinate to bear fruit. So thankfully, this old man that we had living next to us bought similar trees. And you know what? With that, we both got fruit out of it. And I think the same thing can be said in our lives, that you don't know everything you need to, nor do, the people right next to you. So that's why inner service workings, we can all learn so much from there. Reaching out to people like on podcasts here, reaching out to different industries, you'll come across things where people will say, well, that's just normal. That's how we do it. But when you bring it back to your industry, it'll be genius. So I always look at that and say that you've got to get out of your backyard in order to cross-pollinate. Very good.
So blame the system, not the people.
Yes. I'm a huge fan that, 97% of the world wants to do a great job. The reason that they don't is because the system's broken. And I'd even say this as a leader, if your virtual assistant isn't doing what you want, don't blame them until you blame yourself and say, did I give them clear direction? If your website is not working the way you want it to, it's not the fault of a plugin. It's not the fault of crazy customers. It's the system. And I even point this out to marketing when people start to complain about, well, I've got crazy customers. And I'm like, well, of course you've got crazy customers because you marketed to crazy customers. You attracted them. You spent money. You've got to be clear with it. And if you think you're frustrated, they are just as frustrated with you. So you're the problem. Fix the system.
Something called value marketing. You go into a new area and people will, some people will go with value where it's the lowest, least expensive, but hard to make a profit doing that. But you get some crazy customers coming in when you break into an area, and you got to get out of that value proposition and get into a quality service proposition, because those customers will drive you crazy.
And you know what? And you're driving them just as crazy. Yeah. Because you're not fulfilling their needs. And it doesn't mean that you're bad or they're bad, but it's just a bad fit. Well, I had a client
if you're going low cost, really low cost to break into an area, they still want that premium service usually. So it's a hard, you got to be straightforward.
I would say that it goes even beyond cost, that you need to be very clear on who you can service the best. We had a client that we worked with, and he was selling a book, and it's an awesome book. It's called Powerful Words by Dr. Clark Gaither. And he jokingly said, when I asked him, who's your ideal customer? And he laughed and he said, anybody with 1995 that wants a book. And I'm like, no, that's not true, because somebody is going to buy this book and they'll get through 10 pages of it and they'll throw it away. I said, you want somebody that's going to buy this book, read the book, and tell 10 friends about it. That's who you want to market to. And he was like, that is a better idea, because there's a cost to marketing, and you'd rather market to people that are going to be proponents and fans and advocates, as opposed to just somebody that's going to give you a $20 bill one time in their life.
So one last point on blame the system, not the people. Mm-hmm. When you call up, I called up a customer service, and I actually couldn't get an answer. So I went to the management, and because it'd been 2 days since the person who was supposed to call me back was doing so, And this was a very big company, which I pay a lot of money to, both in CRM and email management. You might know them. Some people get confused through them without saying their name.
I understand.
But it's a very difficult platform.
That was a softball to throw up to me.
Yeah, I strongly urge that consultants, you hire a consultant to work in this area. And I'll say it's an Infusionsoft. But what I want to say, and I hate to use their name and use an example, but they blamed their customer rep for not getting back to me instead of blaming the system. Exactly what you're talking about. I said, no, it's not the rep's fault. It's your company's fault for not getting back to me. And you're the manager. I came across like the old military days there, sort of whatever. So ever see that happen, those issues? That's a common issue with the system and customer service.
Very much so. And unfortunately, it's
young manager.
It's easy to blame a person, but it's hard to hate a person. So you don't hate that customer service rep, right? Because here's a young kid. He's trying to do his best. When he got in touch with them, he's got a mom and a dad and everybody too. It's hard to hate a person, but it's easy to hate a company. And that's the company that you start to hate. And, you never talk about, I had this customer service rep and Bill didn't get back to me. Nobody talks about that. They talk about that brand. So don't blame your people, blame the system.
Right. So what's ordinary to you is amazing to others. Number 4.
Yes. And this one I'm almost put as number 1. This is one of my things that I've looked at life. Whatever you have and whatever you know, it's amazing. People will be amazed out there by it. You've got something to share. And you may think, well, everybody knows this, but they don't. Maybe everybody in your small community knows it, but there are other people that you could help and serve with that. So, for example, being on an aircraft carrier, the first couple days that you're on there, you might go up there and watch flight ops. But after that, it's just normal. It's like, why would anybody spend their time doing that? Well, most civilians would die to stand up there for an hour and just watch that happen. It's ordinary to us, but amazing to other people. And it's the same way. You talk about, how to get on a podcast. It's easy. Well, it's easy once you understand how to do it, but other people are amazed by that and they need to know that information. How do you take people from being listeners to leads? Well, it's easy. There's a system behind it. And once people know the system, then they can use that too. But I always encourage people, just don't keep inside what you know. Share that with other people.
Very good. Very good. We could talk about copy too, but maybe we will at the end, how you get that person who doesn't have that experience to understand that it's not as tough as you might think. Mm-hmm. The next one, I said, don't reinvent. I shortened it up, but let me read the entire element. There's nothing new under the sun. Don't reinvent, learn and model.
Exactly. And that goes back to that person that you said, copy, and they think it's hard. Well, it is hard if you've got to start it from the very beginning, but there's other people that have done whatever you're doing. Just be smart enough to find them, to model off of them, and to learn from them. I'm always amazed, especially online, how open people are. They're not trying to hide their secrets. They're open and to share them so that they can learn more of them too. You just have to be smart enough to find the person and ask the question.
One of the hardest things I see though is there's a lot of free content, and it's very good content. And by the way, I enjoy reading at night too, if I can. I read last night, so maybe that's why I'm in a better mood, even though I'm tired, worked a lot of hours. But that said, it's really difficult to find out when you should pay a coach, when you should pay for advice, or when you should pay for a technician to come in and do something. Those are tough things to decide. There's some core knowledge you have to understand, be familiar with before you start, going out and paying big bucks, because you'll burn through your money pretty darn fast. Any thoughts about how you develop that process, how you know who to pay and not to pay?
Unfortunately, I probably spend too much time trying to figure it out on my own. Whenever I hire a consultant, or pay somebody to do something, I don't want them just to do it. I want to learn the process as I'm going. So if I hire somebody to do videos, I'm going to ask them questions the entire time. Why do you put the light there? Why do you put the light there? What kind of camera is that? So that he's not only doing the job, but he's teaching me at the same time. And so I'm a lot quicker to get coaches and to shorten up that learning curve because I know I can execute and that I can learn it. I'm smart enough to learn it, but that time is better spent doing other things.
Especially in the military, I always believed that I could do anything as long as I had a book or a manual, like you were talking about earlier, which is true. I learned to build subdivisions, even though I had a general engineering degree, which helped. You were a mechanical engineer, from the nuke side. Were you mechanical at the academy?
I was.
Okay, that helped. So, I mean, you can take that field and go about anywhere with it because you can do about anything. I'm sure I could teach you how to build. You could teach yourself how to build a subdivision or a home, a little bit of effort, and you have to build one or test it and go out and do it.
But at some point, you have to look at it and say, where do you bring the highest value? Mm-hmm. I can do things. It doesn't mean that I should do things. Going back to that essentialism, one of the things that I always focus on is delegating. I have 3 columns there. The things that I don't like to do. The second ones are the things that I don't do extraordinary. Graphic design. Can I go into Canva? Can I make an image? Yeah, I can spend a lot of time in there, but at the end, it doesn't look that pretty. There's other people that's their zone of genius. You can give that to them and they'll come up with something that I couldn't have done in a week. So that's zone 2. And then zone 3 is things that I shouldn't be doing, things that aren't bringing the maximum amount of value to me and to my company. And in Thou Shalt Prosper, they talk about that. It's like, are you better off mowing your own lawn or paying somebody else to do that so that you can put out a digital product? Well, I don't want to pay somebody, $10 an hour to mow my lawn. Well, then you're saying that your time is worth $10 an hour.
Yeah. There's a point, though, and everyone has to remember this. There's a point where people actually enjoy doing certain things, even though they may not do them well or they want to improve. So exactly. You got to balance that, too, because maybe stress reduction to go mow the lawn. Personally, I'd rather be out working out or running during that time for my stress reduction, or bound on the river or hiking, something of that nature. So very good. So number 6, choose who you work with.
Yes. And this one, I'm really big on this. My grandpa, before I went to the academy, he gave me some advice. He said, always choose who you drink with because you can't choose who you work with. And for him, that was so true. He was a mechanic. He ran a service station in a small town. I mean, he needed every one of those 10,000 people in that town to run his business. And I look back on that, and that's not my reality right now. If I wouldn't drink with somebody, if I wouldn't have them around my family, I don't want to work with them. You don't need 7 billion people as your customers. You probably need less than 1,000. So find those people that you love to work with, that love to work with you, and you'll get more satisfaction out of it. You'll get more profits out of it, and they'll be more thrilled by it. So choose very carefully who you work with.
That's very good. And you could maybe say even choose who's on your email list.
Yes.
Instead of hitting like buying a bunch of garbage, really gets a good email list.
Yeah. I anybody that buys email lists is just buying problems.
Yeah. And look at your email list. 1,000 really good clients on your email list will keep you very busy and create a great company. I know that for a fact. You want to break it down. You don't need those mega email lists. You just need a good email list.
Yeah, you look at the people with the Twitter followers, and they've got 40,000 Twitter followers, and they're following 40,000 people, and they've done 2 tweets. It's like, no, thanks. That's not what I want.
Very good. Customers are your only experts.
Yes, I'm real big on data. From an engineering standpoint, and customers are continually telling us what they love and what they loathe, right? So if you look at the analytics on your site, they're telling you what you should do more of and what you should stop doing. And so that's very important. We've all got our opinions, and even experts and consultants have their opinions. And that really takes us into the next one, is test everything.
Test and improve.
Test and improve. People
wash.
say, well, you should do this, or, Facebook advertising is the way to go. And somebody will ask, well, what do you think of that? I'm like, sounds like something you should test, because you could test that and the experts will tell you whether or not you're supposed to do it. And from that standpoint, that's why I think the businesses now, that I can get them up and running and profitable and running on their own in that 12 to 24 months, because I'm continually improving based on what the customers are telling me. So I don't have to spend a lot of time doing studies. I can look once a week, once a month at the feedback, at the numbers, and realize, okay, this is how I have to tune up this process to get it better. And at that point, it's not magic. It's just listening to the customers.
Very good. Very good. Well, Tom, we've had a nice long discussion, and this will be evergreen. People will, these build. I go back and do look at the numbers, and people listen to these for a long time. It's not like a short little show, but people will find you and they'll go back and listen to these. And it's like a little book we just created about your life, your background, what you're doing now. So in closing, to the listener out there who've stayed to the end here, and there'll be quite a few, what do you want to tell them? First of all, I want to tell them how to contact you. Anything else? Sure.
I really do believe what's ordinary to you is amazing to me. And I love connecting with people for that cross-pollination. So please do, check out my website at tmschwab.com. All the stuff we talked about is at tmschwab.com/timelines. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Tom Schwab in Kalamazoo. So please connect with me, and I'd love to talk with you. I do a lot of speaking and coaching throughout the country, so I always put that out there. And the first thing I do whenever I'm going to a different area is I say, hey, who do I know there in LinkedIn? And I always try to get together with them either for breakfast or lunch or dinner. So reach out to me, and who knows, you may get some good advice out of it, and I might buy you breakfast someday.
Well, Tom, thank you for coming on Timelines. You can see the whole show at timelinesofsuccess.com, or you can go to podcastershome.com. We got the links to this show and all the shows that we work on. And I got one last question. Who's going to win the Army-Navy game this year?
Same person that always wins it, Navy.
And I'll close with, go Army, beat Navy.
Please edit that out.